Welcome to the Culture Podcast, where we uncover the hidden mechanics of high control groups, their tactics, and their impact, and we speak with the survivors who broke free. My name is Derek, and I'm your host.
My name is Trinity, and I'm also your host. On this podcast, we explore cult life as real people who have lived through the life-changing process of leaving a high control group.
Thanks for coming along with us. As we said in the first podcast, our goal really is to create a good environment, just to have open, honest communication with, all of us humans on this planet, and invite different guests on and kind of hear their stories of their life. And so, yeah, episode 2 is going to be Trent leading the way, and hopefully asking me some really good questions like I gave him on episode 1.
Man, I'm going to try to be as meaningful and thoughtful as you, dude. I really will. We have some core foundation, very simple, of just like we want to respect humanity and the processes that we all take and the histories that we have, etc. And so our thoughts are our own. We think that's a core human right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we're approaching this, is like a kind of not academic, but like a social discussion, like a civic social discussion, as it should be probably.
Yeah, and we've intentionally made this space a place where we know that people can be persecuted for religious or ideological means. We share in your persecution and pain, and we know that everyone's gone through a different journey up until this point.
Yeah, I think that's the simple crux of why we're here, dude. Is we literally physically share trauma with a lot of you.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, that wasn't asked for, and so it's just like we're not going to say the same things over again, and we're going to try to be less verbose. I struggle with that. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to be less verbose always, and
And maybe we will say the same things over again.
maybe we will.
Who knows?
Okay, so who is my interviewee today? Who am I talking to?
My name is Derek Duvall, and I am just another random person on this planet.
Dude, same. And so whenever we do these for other folks, know that you can present yourself to us in a fictionalized name, like an author would or something, so that you can be anonymous. And that's like a safety we offer. We've chosen to be here as people, who exist and live and breathe and all that. But like, you can show up to us in private however you want. We can present you however you want.
Yeah, we do, and we do want anyone that wants to come on and tell their story to be available. There's some intentionality as well as being, at this point in time, intentionally an audio only podcast. Maybe people don't want to be on video. That may change over time, but at this point, there is an availability for anonymity with that as well. But yeah, to extended answer your question, as we talked about in episode 1 a little bit, was raised a Jehovah's Witness and didn't until a few years ago have an understanding that potentially grew up in a cult.
Yep.
Which is a trigger word for some people. So if you don't like that word, high control group. But either way, definitely grew up with a lens of the world being completely different from many, many other people on the planet.
Yeah. I get it. I really do, dude, from my heart. And I've seen like your human journey, and we've seen each other's in a way that's visceral to humanity. Tell me, in summary, like just as simply as you can, who you are today versus who you were as far back in the beginning as you want to go.
Oh, I think that there's probably a shared mindset of who I am today just because I'm getting older. We all get a little wiser the older we get.
Yeah.
But who I am now is a very, very open person to all possibilities. I'm also very, very okay with not knowing answers, but being open to anyone that can give me a different idea. I'm very welcoming of it. And as long as you can back it up with some sort of proof, some concrete evidence, or even if you give me something that many might seem fringe or far out there, even if you can wrap that in something that's like, yeah, we don't,
Coherent.
yeah, like if it's like, yeah, I don't really know what this experience meant to me, but I believe in this or this because of this. And if that's wrapped around an ideology of still an open lack of full understanding, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
This world's crazy.
I
So
know.
who knows some of the things that are going on. But who I was when I was younger, oh, I knew everything. I had all the answers. I grew up in a religion that felt pity on the world we lived in,
Yeah.
and we weren't a part of the world. We had extra knowledge and insights and info that we felt was very unique and special to us because of how our quote unquote prophets dialed down the information to us. So I felt pretty special. And now I'm just a random person on this planet who's not special at all. None of us really are.
And yet also that perspective makes you pretty special in some ways, by some accounts,
Yeah. Well, thanks.
which is cool. It's like duality.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah, who I am now versus then, just completely different, and still progressing and learning and growing day by day.
I think that's true for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we touched like really a lot on the structure of how me and you have intertwined like throughout life and time. But I mean, is there anything you want to say further on that as yourself?
Well, yeah, if, we're going to obviously share this podcast and invite others on. But yeah, Trinity and I have grown up together. I'm a little bit older than him, but some of my first memories were just being astounded at his name because growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe in the Trinity. So, how is it possible that this young man has the name Trinity? And we learned in episode 1 how that was possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I reconnected with you as an adult, and small world, and we just continued to interact with one another, not going to the same congregation, but always kind of being in similar friends groups, and
Like in orbit.
yeah, in each other's orbit. And then yeah, it wasn't until a little bit later that we got even closer, and then that closeness did shatter due to the framework we were a part of. So we'll detail that always, but yeah, and now we're back, baby.
Yeah, baby. And I want to clarify, like we had a fracture for a moment in time
Hmm.
that was observable and felt, and yet like really repairable
Yeah,
through trust and ethics and accountability as humans and like other personal things that we have our own private definition of between
I
us.
think deep down, you and we've talked about it. We also, I think we are pretty humble, and it's not very humble to say that you're humble, but I think that we're pretty humble people that try to be pretty understanding and empathetic.
Shared framework, of ideology and basis, just based in fact, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that like different points we've experienced like some of the lows of humanity, which is a humble acquiescence or admission of fact, which I think we all make. All right, so like I'm gonna start kind of following the same structure we've set for these types of interviews we've been following. So let's start at the beginning and just work our way to today. How'd you first come in contact with the group?
Well, I was born in, so I've basically, from the time I can remember thoughts, I was always a Jehovah's Witness. So, have early memories of not being a part of society to some extent.
Yeah.
It's all I ever knew. So yeah, I was definitely born in.
And I'm implying like some senses that we've shared, but like aloneness and like isolation of thought and like seeking for truth privately, stuff like that.
Well, I mean, there's stuff as early as childhood where you're not a part of, they're doing Pledge of Allegiance in class, and you have to either, stay sitting, or you can stand, but you don't put your hand on your heart. If you're
Little symbolisms of difference.
just just little things that you just, when you're younger, you're just like, I'm not like everyone else in this class.
Yeah.
So that's how you start, and it just continues. The more and more you get older, the more and more you can take on more information. They give it to you, and you're like, oh, that's why I couldn't do that when I was younger. So it's just, yeah, it's I was born in, and my world was being a Joe's Witness.
I attest. I mean, literally, dude, we've sweat in the summer in Arizona in the heat side by side multiple years and many occasions. I know. Full suit, no hat.
It's so crazy. I mean, the Jehovah's Witness organization will be really interesting in one part of the world where they'll have a very strict rule where it's like, I mean, it's 150 15 degrees out in the Phoenix heat, and you're wearing a full on suit out in the ministry, going door to door.
Isn't that also similar to here? Yeah.
And then that same Jehovah's Witness organization in like Africa would be like, oh no, you can just wear like a shirt, like a collared shirt, and I've seen shorts, and it's just like, yeah, but that's over there. It's like, well, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It was great. I enjoyed every minute of it. Oddly, even though like some of it was struggle and we had a lot of private conversations and like little quiet agreements made in silence where we agreed to like certain behaviors, like all throughout time.
Yeah, it's like it's crazy hot over here too. Like, but yeah, we literally sweat it out together for sure.
Yeah. And then we learned how to do it successfully, ethically, probably.
Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses are required to preach. They have a kind of a structure where you get pressured into becoming what's called an unbaptized publisher. And a publisher is someone that, is required to go door to door and preach and hand out magazines and whatnot. And I mean, yeah, early days we're doing that and into our teens, kind of when we reconnected in my early 20s. And
Right. As humans, yeah, we did. I remember listening to like good, clean, wholesome, non-cursing music together. Well,
yeah, you got to do it. So we did it. And we just tried to have
yeah.
tried to have as much fun as possible. You try to just group yourself with people you're like, "Okay, they're gonna be chill. Alright, this person's in my car group, you're gonna come with me on these streets and preach," and, yeah.
Which now, how do you think of that in simple scientific terms, like that practice of us doing that?
I mean, scientific terms,
Or easy terms, maybe, like easy truths.
well, I think you like everyone, like, there's social groups, so I think you just try to break off with the group that you feel the most comfortable with.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been in car groups, out in the ministry where we're stuck with older ones or people that we don't really align with, just a friend level, and we're like, I'm miserable. And then they're also like, "Hey, I want you to take every door." And you're like, "What?" And it's like, "It's gonna be for your own good. You need to get the reps in." And it's like, "I'm miserable." Like, so yeah, so if you get a chance, especially the older you get, where you can kind of dictate your own claims, you have your own car, you're like, no, this, you plan ahead of time. You're like, yeah, I'm going to come with Trent and,
I'm going to control these circumstances and my variables.
yeah. So then you're just like, I'm not putting up with that shit anymore. Like, I'm not going to be with old man Jenkins and required to do all this shit I don't want to do.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, you learn years later, like a lot of people that are out now, they're like, dude, I just flubbed the numbers. I didn't.
Yep. I just turned it in, dude.
You just phone it in, man. Like, and it's like, but weren't we supposed to be trying to not be blood guilty and try to like save people?
I mean, you're talking about like right away the same type of natural existential crisis that we both probably caught on to pretty early on in life.
It's like no one really cares,
Yeah.
especially in our environment where it was really hot. But
Yet we cared deeply and tried
I mean, yeah, we tried.
together and separately.
We tried until we didn't.
Yeah, exactly. And well, we converted our effort into trying for different things successfully.
Yeah.
So you kind of remember your first memories of being a witness as a kid. And so,
Well, yeah, and I also have memories too of like, my particular situation. My mom died early of cancer. My dad remarried, and he had remarried someone with four kids. He had four kids, and so we were a very large family in California at the time. They called us the Brady Bunch, and it was just, uh, I mean, just wrangling all those people up. It was just a lot of work. I do have memories of conflict of some of the older siblings not wanting to go out and preach, some of the older siblings not wanting to go to meeting. And you think of two parents trying to wrangle eight kids. Some of them are teenagers, some of them are younger. I'm the youngest out of all eight.
yeah,
And just trying to acclim
it's so much organized, efficient, hard to do work with a family with good intentions.
you don't understand, like a lot of people go, I have work and then I go home. And a lot of witness fans, no, we have work and then we have all of this other stuff. There's so much stuff to do. So
Like real as existential stuff, not fake man-made existential stuff.
we're training to save lives,
Yeah.
our own lives as well, from the get-go. So yeah, so I just kind of grew up in an environment where there's a lot of wrangling all the kiddos up and trying to get them piled in the van to get to meetings. And just I mean, and meetings, like, unlike churches nowadays, from what I know of, because I've never been to any other church other than Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall. They don't have like Sunday school. They don't have, separate areas where you take the kiddos to kind of learn from a youth pastor or something. It's like you're in the main auditorium and you're learning deep doctrine at like as like 3 years old.
As a child, and then they measure you by metric.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not only that, then they fucking eat you alive when they review you after you've just publicly spoken for the first time.
Yeah, you're expected to comment and participate as like a learned person. And it's like I don't really know this, but
As soon as you can,
yeah.
like, figure it out quick.
So yeah. So that was kind of some of my early days.
Yeah. How was information controlled? And like, what were your, maybe like, what are your rules versus what are their rules? Or what do you want to say about what you could read or ingest or say?
I think about the question in many different ways, because when you're younger, you just kind of go with the flow. You're just like, this is the way life is. You get to be a teenager, you get to be in your 20s and 30s, and you just don't realize that that's just how it is. That's just life. So, I look back and it's like I have a lot of doubts. And when you grow up in a high control group, you're taught where your resources are at. And now we live in a modern age with the internet and with AI and different things where data is so accessible. But I mean, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, like, the internet wasn't always what it is now. If you had a question, it's like, literally, here's the book, and you had to turn to that book. And then you're like, oh, well, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. And then that book gets put back up on the shelf, like in the library. And you don't really have a lot of time to like do these deep dives. So you're just like, okay, well, I guess that doubt, that kind of question, I guess that makes sense. I mean, they are inspired by God, or they are like, Jehovah's mouthpiece. And so you just take it as what it is. But then the older you get, you learn, like we talked about, you learn to ask the whys about things, and you learn to ask these questions. And after a while, you just go like, I just don't feel like this question is getting a very good answer. And so you logically want to seek out new areas of questions and new areas of answers, because the tool set that you were given is not adequate.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question real quick. I've never asked you this question before. Why do you think that you think about the why?
Oh, that's a really great question. So, ironically, as we've talked about as well, the witness organization is run like a business. And in good business, I grew up in kind of a structure of management and leadership. And so, when you train people in business, you train them to ask the why.
Literally.
Literally.
Cognitively on purpose.
You train them. I want you to ask me why, because the way our brains will work is, if we know the reason why something exists, we will connect to it much more so than just being told without reason. So you go like, okay, if you're training on like a computer system, you're like, well, I need you to do this, this, and this, because if you do it the wrong way, this will happen. Or by doing it this right way, it's the most efficient and it'll lead to greater success. You could apply this also to sales or whatever it is. So the brain goes like, oh, okay, he's telling me how to do it, and he's telling me why it's important to do this way. So therefore, I should do it this way because I get it. He's giving me the full frame, the full structure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, brother. I know exactly what you mean. And I think that is like such a well framed statement of simple, like Socratic knowledge application and logical testing type stuff that you could ever do. That's so simple that every human is very capable of.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I taught that myself in business and in leadership and managing and teaching and training people at work. And so you start to go like, well, why am I using this method at work, but I'm not using it at home? Why am I not using this method in all facets of life?
Right. Because it's useful.
It's like, ironically, it's a lot like that show on Apple TV where they have like an implant in their brain, and once they get to work, they don't remember their life outside work. And it's like, it's true. There's a part of me that's, well, I need to start applying this why question accessing kind of concept everywhere.
The application of curiosity can be a really cool thing when combined with logic,
Yep.
practically.
And the show's called Severance, by the way. Oh, it was bothering me. I had to at least say the name.
Love it. I mean, dude, yeah, at this point, everyone knows. It's like reasonable to assume everyone's heard of that amazing show that we had nothing to do with.
No.
Uh, you have, I think that you display that, like, you understand how you formed like these rules, how they were presented to you. And you've just, I think you've demonstrated that, like, just there's dozens of incongruencies over time. How did the group view outsiders and you once you had this information? How did they, the witnesses?
Well, I was asking why about things, but you just it's hard to explain, but when you're breaking down your foundation, it's not an easy and quick process. So even though I would go home and have these why questions, go to the resources we were allowed to see, I would get an answer. I would not feel fully satisfied by the answer and the result. But you're also living your life. You got bills, you got structure, you got work, you got relationships, responsibilities, and there's only so much time. You're just kind of in it. So there was a sense of not fully wanting it. And there was a key moment which we can get into later as to what kind of my breaking point was. But like, how do they view outsiders? So the way that witnesses view themselves is everyone else around them is considered worldly. And ironically, I feel like if someone outside the witness faith would say that's a worldly person, they would kind of say that's like a well-traveled, well-educated, has really immersed himself in what the world has to offer. And it's kind of a positive thing. Would you agree?
I mean, absolutely within context, but primarily positive.
Yeah. But witnesses, if you're worldly, you are an outsider. And obviously most people, all people that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses are worldly.
Which is intrinsic us versus them, which is literally the root of bias, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic kind of technique to create that us versus them model.
It's clearly seeable that they're trying to split people into two channels that work chaotically together. And you and I have both tried to just meld our two independent thought processes together in a helpful way.
Yeah. So by separating, it's really interesting because you would see a witness. Well, so let me frame it this way. So witnesses, if they're really in, you go to work, you go to school,
Yeah.
you're living adjacent to the world in parallel.
In parallel, successfully.
And you're kind of, yeah, you're paying your bills and you're going to school or work, but you're taught from an early age that interaction is very, it has its limits.
Outside that.
And you're taught that you don't really ever fully want to commit to anyone in any sort of depth that's not a witness.
The social safety of the group.
It's a social safety. So, hey, how was your weekend? And you're just like, oh, it's great. Yeah, we had a great weekend. We watched the show or whatever. And they're very cordial and very friendly. But if there's ever any attempt for more, you're just kind of taught to back away. Hey, you want to go get drinks tonight? Some buddies are all. It's like, oh no, I got stuff I gotta do. And eventually,
And so most shrewd people start concealing little facts about themselves purposefully. You're trained to fit in.
yeah, you try to fit in and appear to be part of the world, but you kind of got your own shit going on and things are going on, and
Yeah.
and eventually people just take the hint and they don't really realize. They just go, oh, they got their own shit going on. They're doing their own thing, and so then they just stop inviting you. And that's like everywhere you go. So you never really truly connect with people that are living on this planet. You only connect.
Outside that little group.
Yes, you only connect with the people within the group, and that type of connection is not very good.
Okay, and then also it's an unspoken truth, but also a very spoken truth with witnesses that you're not only living and succeeding together here on Earth, but like with a specific intention of like doing so amicably and ethically and morally perfectly in the future.
Let me recap what I think your question is. You're saying that the way you're living now, you're trying to live that way forever with other witnesses?
When you're a witness, you're purposely thinking
Hmm.
there's going to be some cataclysmic event. They've told me that. And so I've got to learn to work with my humans together now
Oh, yeah.
to benefit my future place on paradise earth or whatever and placement.
Yeah, there's some level of prep work and some level of like how I'm going to use the people around me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
strategically.
Strategically.
Yeah, and there's a sense of pity for the lost sheep,
Yes.
for the flock.
And a sense of loss of like, oh my God, so many people are gonna die. It's not gonna be me. I'll be safe, but
Yeah, I'll be
I
saved.
begrudgingly accept the purpose of humanity is, stuff like that.
Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know when you want to touch on it, but there's definitely kind of a pivotal moment for me that finally,
Hit me.
had my brain kind of wake up to some extent.
Okay. Well, yeah. What was it?
So, and I've never the crazy thing about this too is like a lot of people don't understand as well is I'm a grown ass man, just as you are, Trent, and there's still a level of like we talked about in the last episode. You technically are still baptized, so but maybe they could have announced you at a congregation, but you don't know.
Yeah.
But they still could technically track you down and say, "Hey, you're officially disfellowshipped now." Blah blah blah.
Which I specifically don't invite them to do. I'm sharing these private ideas in a public capacity in good faith, etc.
Yes, but by putting ourselves out here, like there's still a level of perceived control over us
Yeah.
where they feel like, oh, now he's specifically putting stuff out there to be an apostate,
Which is not my intention at all. What I
which is not either of ours intention.
yeah,
We're just living disconnected from that old world
in peace, in congruence.
in peace. Yes.
I honestly would approach any witness today with these ideas and treat them with dignity and respect,
Yeah.
rightfully so,
But
and for many
but
ways, in humanitarian
but
ways.
they're still so in that they don't see it that way.
And they're welcome to whenever.
Sure. Yeah, and that they have no control of us. Most witnesses that we're taught to not be really educated, and most witnesses are in construction or window washing, or I mean, they're
Simple but old and respected trades.
men that really don't have a lot of power or are very learned.
Or maybe do and can handle it well. There's a lot of those.
There's some,
Some. Okay, yeah.
but the reason I preface that is as I say this, I've intentionally never really fully said what I woke up in a public forum to many people because I intentionally did not want it to get back to my father.
Oh.
So he may get his hands on this audio eventually and may learn, and I apologize because I had no intent to have you learn this, but it was my father's doing. So I think I've told you this in the past, but my father collected a lot of the old books. And the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, started printing the Watchtower magazine, I believe in the 1700s, definitely in the 1800s, and had a periodical that they would produce. And the early Bible students would make this newspaper and print at the time truths. And the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society started to grow more and more and produce more literature and started to make books and different things. And my dad was a major collector of a lot of these old relics. And so he collected all those and he gave me those books as kind of like, hey, I'm getting older. I want you to have my collection. Collection was worth a lot of money, books from the 1920s and early on. And I just started reading these books and I started to read things that I couldn't believe. I started to read things that I didn't align with. Do you remember me telling you this story or have I not told you this before?
Yeah, I've had many conversations with you across a lot of times and topics about like incongruencies just in like the historical, and I'm looking at studies in the scriptures, like an original copy that I've had since I was a child because I was fascinated by the fact that there is like all this symbology there and like mentally, but also physically on paper, like there's lots of interesting stuff in there. So as a kid, I studied it too, but not maybe as deeply as I wanted to or have yet.
Yeah.
Wow. This is common, by the way. I want to stay for fact. I mean, witnesses are known to like recycle books, knowing that it's important historical data to them. They preserve it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had basically every major book. A lot of Old Faithful have the books. The interesting thing is those books they're kind of highly regarded, but they're just kind of put on the shelf and never looked at again. So with the way that new light, as I like to call it, keeps coming in, the light keeps getting brighter. This old book will be just outdated and no one will care for some reason. And it's like, but these truths are now no longer truth. And so I read things about, the early Bible students believed in like pyramidology. There was multiple failed prophecies of the end, Armageddon coming in the 1800s, and then 1914 originally was Armageddon, and then that was changed to Jesus is coming back invisibly, which is, hey, that's really easy to do. Jesus could come back invisibly, so no one could see him. Um, and I just started to see a lot of these things where my brain was doing the mental gymnastics to try to keep this all together. And eventually I just kept looking for truths. And my brain said, well, how can God mess up on these things, these prophecies? How can God have these failed prophecies? And it just led me to going like, oh shit, like this isn't from God. This this is from this is from someone that's not God. This is from just men who have
Did hearing that or knowing that ever make you want to be a prophet yourself?
hearing these new truths.
Just any of that, like as a kid or like maybe as to today, knowing all the history, do you want to be a prophet?
Never,
Okay, I agree full-heartedly.
never.
Do you want to be a spiritual leader?
Yeah, I have no connection to any desire to be anything like that. But I
Me too.
no, I have no desire to be a spiritual leader or anything like that. I think it's interesting. So I've always been a leader, but I've always been defined and defined myself as a servant leader. So my definition of leadership is collaborating and using everyone to their best ability and help train them up to be their
That's
best.
so practical.
And most people, like, I'm in the trenches with them. I'm not, I'm not in front of them or behind them having them push me or pull me on a cart that they're carrying. Like I'm there with them. And yeah, so I have no desire to be a part of any of those type of control schemes.
Same.
But yeah, that's how I kind of woke up. I eventually got to a point where I'm like, I think I grew up in a cult. Oh no.
And some pretty smart people founded it with pretty good intentions, right?
Well, that is the question, right?
Right.
I mean, do you really ever truly know? The that time in the 1800s was a big boom for a lot of new religions coming out.
Yeah, and ideas
There was a hunger for the Reformation and for things to happen.
in all world, in all times, and everything. Like there's this renaissance of its own in the 1800s all throughout the world.
Yeah. So I think that there was more than likely an earnest hope that he truly. I think the founder was it Russell,
Yeah.
that he truly thought that he was on the right path and maybe had some sort of en- enlightenment. But and you never really know. Like, to some of the people that run it now, do they know it's a farce, or do they truly believe?
I don't know. I think it's a mix. I think it's just like, probability. It's probably all over the place. And then it comprises a sum that is what it is.
Yeah. So I woke up through that, and that just kind of started my new journey and process of trying to figure out where to go next.
Okay. So then we talked about a lot of things like rules you had to follow, moments that made you pause, how groups viewed outside and new information, how stuff was formed.
Yeah, you said it earlier, and just to touch on it, the bite model is kind of a huge thing. So it is an external model that a man has created. I think it's Stephen Hassan wrote it, and he's a former cult member of a cult called the Moonies, and it's a structure that you could possibly use to help frame if maybe possibly you're part of a cult. So it's like, if a group or organization you're part of controls your behaviors, that's the B. The information you take in, that's the I. Your thoughts, that's the T. And then
Yeah.
your emotions, that's the E. So yeah, the bite model is kind of a thing of like the structure or group that you're in that really controls that. Then you might possibly be in a cult or a high control group.
And this is just like, I just want to say, this is not it may be your personal interpretation, but it's not a diagnosis or anything. It's like you just literally thinking, well, let me just use my common sense as a human of my own free will and think through this rationally in a structure.
Yeah, let me just think through this and ascertain. I mean, someone escaping or kind of waking up or getting out of a cult is mentally and physically very difficult. So it took a lot of time. It took actually a couple years of clarity, of research, of what do I do next? Who do I talk to? Fortunately, like you, I did try my best to not be too reactive. I did try not to.
And you do this by calculating and planning strategically over time in an ethical, positive.
Yeah, I tried to really plan kind of how this would go, and some things didn't go the way I hoped, but you can't control all variables.
How do you know that you can't control all variables, Derek?
Because of the many times I've tried.
Yeah, dude. Okay, practical, real world experience applied using logic. Okay, just checking.
All
Sanity check. We're good.
right, we're good.
Okay. We've covered a lot of ground in like a few questions, and your input is just incredibly valuable, dude. I appreciate it sincerely as a human. I think that like just sharing simple ideas rooted in logic is good for humans, which is like I think what we're aiming for,
Well, I think there's also an empathetic side and an emotional side. I think it's the full like cocktail
right?
of like, yeah, we're just regular people that have been through this experience. Yeah, and it's just how we're kind of moving forward through it. But there is a lot of logic bombs that drop where you're just like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and that's okay. And I think we've shown it's okay to accept that they aren't congruent, and it's okay to work toward congruency in an ethical, meaningful way for you as a human. And that's our right and kind of a implied responsibility, right?
Yep, totally.
Sorry, though, like a little intense. It's we got to think through things, and just try, which we do. And that's just like a way we live. We're talking about it. What else? Is there anything I haven't touched on that you want to share? Probably a lot. We'll cover a lot. You know this.
Yeah, I think I think the biggest thing is for me to come to be where I'm at now has been surrounded by a lot of loss.
Do you think we've preserved each other to prevent further loss?
Yeah, I think having you and having others that like can relate to what you're going through or have gone through and kind of have like a unconditional love to some extent and an unconditional compassion to go like, hey, I understand, or I may not fully understand, but I'm with you. If you need to chat with someone, I think having just a few people like that really helps you get through it. I think the struggle I see from a lot of people leaving these high control groups is there's so much control in their life that they don't have any structure outside of the group. And so it's very challenging to get out, especially the younger you are, because you just have nothing. And so there's a lot of people that are suffering and struggling because they don't have friends or family that are out that can help. So I'm thankful for the friends and family that I did have. And I hope that they know that, whether it be a quick text or a phone call or, helping me move or, just being there to give me a place to crash. There's a lot of people that have helped me along my journey and my path to be where I'm at now because
And I.
yeah, because you just lose a lot. Um,
Yeah. Have you and I personally given each other clothing and shelter and food and basic necessities out of human decency and requirement and respect to each other?
I mean, you've given me shelter, you've given me food. I've visited you. I basically had nowhere to live, and I asked, "Hey, can I come and crash at your place?" So you're one of the peoples that I have crashed with. I don't think you've given me clothing, but you have helped. And yeah, I mean, it's the loss, but it's also just you know, you- uh, uh, we are very socially structured people. A lot of these modern day churches, most people will tell you they love going there for the community.
For better or worse.
They have a community of friends. They have their bake sales and their weekend events, and they're all going to do soccer or baseball or barbecues, and that's
And I can celebrate that humanity.
mhm. Yeah, it's how we're built. We really, even if you're introverted and you prefer to stay home, more than likely, once you get dragged out of the house, you're so thankful that you have that community to go to and spend some time with, and that they're there for you to help you. So that's a major loss. But I don't know. I'll tell you, looking back, like wouldn't give any of it up. So I'm even though it sucks to have a lot of the loss that I've had, I'm also very grateful and thankful for the new relationships I've created, and relationships that are real, honest, sometimes tough, but it's the foundation is real, and it's because someone chooses to be a part of your life at whatever level, not because we share the same God.
Yeah, because why though?
I mean, he just brings us all together, doesn't he?
Why then, if not God?
I'd say the loss. And
Maybe like a connection with humanity?
well, the interesting thing is, I think you are more empathetic to the plight of humanity once you start to realize the consistent patterns that happens with humans,
Fair.
and once you start to realize kind of how we're coded to some extent, and so you really start to have a lot more pity and empathy for people, because sometimes a lot of our brains are on autopilot and we're just kind of reacting to what we've been taught as a child. And so I do try to really be understanding of people as much as possible, but it's hard, man. There's some days where I don't have clarity, and I'm not as empathetic as I would like to be, and understanding. I'm just tired. I'm still I'm only human.
Heard and accepted and reverberated back to you.
Yeah.
Man, we've covered so much. I appreciate your time, and I think that other people will too, and that's up for them to decide, like, fairly, and that's like the intent that we've done, I think, these first 2 episodes, to just sort of show people how we logically discourse in a fair and ethical way to others that is pretty universally accepting, just rooted in logic always.
Yeah, and like we've said, our goal is to bring people on here. We already have a couple people lined up that we want to chat with. Feel free to reach out to us, and if you want to be on the podcast, we'd love to have a conversation with us. I hope that you can see within these first 2 podcasts that we do genuinely want to have a real conversation, even though it may seem like an interview. It's something, my goal, and I think Trent shares this, where we just want to be as vulnerable as possible and just talk. And as it's been stated, there may be moments of time where the guests we bring on we may not fully align with, but there will be respect.
Yeah. We're going to do so as respectfully as I fucking can to each and all of you.
And with a certain level of curiosity as well. Maybe not, that's the other thing too, is growing up as a witness, everyone we surrounded ourselves with was pretty much the same,
Within bounds. Yeah, within defined bounds. Yeah, you have like varied levels of uniform uniqueness.
within defined bounds. So when it came down to it, a little extra variables. Oh, this person, really loved dirt bikes. This other person really was into music. But for the most part, everyone we grew up with was pretty much the same foundation and kind of had the same mindset. So it's really meaningful for me to have conversations with people that's like, oh, I've I've never been around your viewpoint,
Same.
or I don't fully see where you're coming from, but it's fascinating to hear how you got there, especially someone coming from the same foundation. We all both started as Jehovah's Witnesses, and now you're over here and you're a Satanist, or now you're over here and you're really going down a Buddhist path, or whatever.
Some people go full Christian in different ways and energy. And, there's all the different
Oh yeah,
types.
yeah. There's some people that's like, Jesus is now my savior. I'm born again, and it's like I personally would never go down that path of Christianity, but I respect it. I have no ill will towards anyone that chooses the path that they're taking. So I'm looking forward to more of these conversations. I know you are too, Trent, and it should be pretty enlightening for everyone that listens, and all the millions of listeners that we have.
Yeah, and I want to say some, I guess, non-ego statements. So we intentionally focused on me and Derek together, combined, just an open civic forum discussion of thought to just show how we kind of interact privately and have been. And that's just the honest, simple truth. And then going forward, we did this so that we could limit the focus on us. We don't want it to be about us at all. I mean, I hope you can see that. We want it to be about the many, 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 many others in wide variety with very different experiences than ours. I mean, we have thoroughly regurgitated ours to great end, I think. And we're tired of that.
Yeah, little stuff will come out over time, and yeah, the goal is to talk with these other people, and yeah, like I said, there's people lined up, and we're really looking forward to getting other people on this podcast. But of course, if any listener has any questions, they'll be able to reach out to us. We'll have all the socials out there, and odds are you're not gonna like everything we have to say. That's totally fine. Be gracious.
We ask you to respect it out of good faith, like we will you.
Be gracious, be human, be
So
understanding. And if, someone that grew up in another denomination that may or may not feel like they're a part of a cult or part of a high control group would like to come on as well, welcome to have them come on and chat from their perspective. And that type of conversation also might be very valuable as well. So we're pretty open to a lot of stuff.
yeah, agreed. I agree.
So with that, we are done, Trent. Episode 2.5 is in the books.
It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Yep. So we'll tease the next podcast that at the rate we're going, we'll be seeing in a few weeks' time. But we definitely are looking forward to the next gentleman that we're going to chat with. Someone that's also close to us, and hopefully his mic quality will be on point.
We're going to have to deal with technical challenges with grace in this next
But
case.
I think it'll be well worth it, and
Will be.
I think everyone will enjoy the conversation. So I don't want to hype it up too much,
Hope so.
but yes,
If anything, it's somber. Forewarning. And then, ooh, real quick. Uh, we have done, I think, a good job of touching on a broad variety of topics and a good amount of sensitivity and sensibility. And we're going to discuss potentially troubling topics in the future that are sensitive, that are vulnerable, that are genuine, that are raw, that are human. There are so many disclaimers written for this. And so we're communicating to you now, after these 2 episodes, it is fair game in our sense of just private understanding that we're just going to share really true stuff,
yeah,
like from people who are voluntarily doing that. And we're going to respect their views.
yeah.
And that I'm putting a period there because of intention.
Yeah, it's one thing to have a conversation where, you can sit in a closed room and you know that the closed room of people that you're around is your people, and you can feel very confident and comfortable to kind of share.
Hard to do, hard balance to strike.
But very hard when you know that this conversation is going to go out into the world. So,
Yeah. And you want to do so with
yeah.
caution and care, rightfully so.
So we will do our best as stewards of this podcast, faithful and discreet stewards.
Oh my God, trigger. See, after the trigger warning was actually the appropriate time to do that. My God, a word.
And and with that, we will talk to you all online very soon. Thank you so much. My name is Derek.
Bye, guys. My name's Trinity.
Good day to you.
Thank you for joining us on this journey in this era. If you found today's episode valuable, please share it with someone who might need it. Check the podcast description for our socials and other information.
Please consider supporting us at Patreon at patreon.com/culturepod. If you'd like to tell your story, please contact us at cult.chur.pod@gmail.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay free.